Welcome to Unfiltered with Brenda Breland, where the only thing we take seriously is not taking life too seriously. I'm Brenda, mom, entrepreneur, straight shooter, and your go-to for saying all the things we've all been thinking. On this podcast, we're talking about life, business, and all the shit no one warned us about. Spoiler, I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of opinions. Let's figure it out together, one unfiltered episode at a time. All right, you guys, we are back. I am so excited to have Jasmine on the show today. Jasmine is a private coaching client of mine, turned friend, and you guys, her story is so impactful, and this woman just has so much heart and so much passion and so much value to bring. And we're going to try to get through as much of it as possible on today's episode. But Jasmine, go ahead and introduce yourself, girl. Tell people who you are, what you do right now, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. Thanks for having me. First of all, my name is Jasmine Mitchell, and I've been in the health and fitness space for well over a decade. I keep on saying like over a decade, but it's really more like 12 to 15 years at this point. And I actually started with competing and always wanted to be a trainer, but I didn't know anyone who was really making money that way. All the trainers that I knew, it was a part-time thing or something that they did for fun. You know, you would hear about like celebrity trainers, but that seemed like really out of my reach. So I did get my personal training certification and then also started studying nutrition because at that time in my life, I was still working in nightlife all through my 20s and most of my 30s. I did work in nightclubs as a server and a bartender, but for most of that time period, I actually worked as a stripper. And so I knew that life definitely had a shelf life. And even though I wasn't sure exactly how I would make personal training happen, I was like, okay, I got to make a move. And so I got that certification. I also looked into nursing. My mother's a registered nurse, so is my brother. But as I was studying nutrition and found out more of the correlation between big pharma and the food industry, that was a big turnoff for me. And yet I felt like I needed to do more to help people preventatively than just personal training alone. So I dove into nutrition. I first started with going to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. They're still around. I'm not sure if the curriculum is still as in-depth as it was when I did it, however many years ago. But that really gave me my first experience going into holistic health and moving in that direction.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm so excited to share more about like what you're doing now. But let's go back to the time whenever you decided, okay, my shelf life for, dancing and bartending and waitressing in these clubs
Yeah.
is no longer for me. Cause I know a little bit about your story, and you were doing some pretty hard shit during that time on top of wanting to transition out. So take us back to that time and what it was like to kind of make that decision, and how that transition worked for you, from that type of nightlife to transitioning into what you're doing now.
Well, I think as I became more health focused, I was never really a party girl. I think I had a party phase at one part of my life. Ironically, when I left, this is one of the times I took a hiatus from stripping and was bartending and cocktailing, but I was in Vegas. And so at that time, this was like 2007, 2008, 2009. Not only would you serve at your club, but on your off nights, you were obligated to go to other nightclubs and hang out, make the room look full. And so there was obviously like a lot of drinking and stuff involved, which in Vegas can become like a normal way of life. And for me at that time, it was also the first time I had been single since I was 19 years old. I had a serious boyfriend from the time I was 19 until I was about 26 and a half, but then immediately got involved with someone else. And that time I was a little bit smarter when the relationship, started going sideways. I left, but I was with that person for about a year and a half. So I was always in a relationship up to that point. And so even though I left stripping, I sort of delved into like being single and what it's like to date, because I hadn't even really had the dating experience aside from high school, which really doesn't count.
Yeah. I love that. And I know like during your time in that transition, you were also preparing for a competition. Is that correct? You were competing at that time too, as you were transitioning out.
Right. So it was a little bit after that. So during the time that I was cocktailing, I started dating a guy who did a lot of fitness modeling, and he did the Fitness Model Fitness America pageant. And I remember I went and watched him in the audience. And when the girls came out, Amanda Latona was the girl who won the competition that year. And I know that name is probably familiar to a lot of people. She's really iconic in the bikini division. But I remember looking at her and thinking, like, I think I could be like that. And so I decided that the following year I would do my first fitness competition. And so I did my first fitness competition right before, it was the week before my 30th birthday. So that was my birthday present to myself. And then that was
Yeah.
really what inspired me to make it a career, because I was also seeing other competitors who would use, their notoriety as being a competitor to create a career on the side. So that gave me some hope. Whereas before I was like, I don't know how I would turn this into a real job where I could actually support myself. Then I did start to see people who were actually doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've clearly been able to do that, which is even more exciting. So, talk to us a little bit about like what how did you handle the transition from from a job standpoint of being in the clubs and doing those types of things to then going to something that's totally opposite? How did you handle that, like physically, mentally, like because that's a big transition, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm assuming it was kind of hard in some situations.
Yeah. So as I started finding myself through fitness, I felt more and more disillusioned by nightlife. I knew that I didn't belong there, but it was also a security blanket for me, because I
Yeah.
knew I could always make a living that way. And not only were you making a living, but in that industry, you're making cash, which is pretty nice. And I definitely had a lack mentality at that time. My parents both struggled financially. And I really didn't have a good relationship with work either, to be honest, in that um, in my household, work was always just kind of, it was borderline punishment, you know? And even no matter how hard you worked, there was never enough money. That was sort of the mentality. And so I was always looking for something where I could walk in, take care of myself, and then have a life outside of that. Because I just didn't really see that at home, unfortunately. And so as I started, especially when I went to integrative nutrition, started studying holistic health, there was so much that just didn't align. It was like I was living a double life. So I was studying nutrition and Ayurveda and all these different nutrition modalities. And at the same time, I'm surrounded by all these drunk people. And at a certain point, I actually left bartending and serving and went back to stripping, just because I felt like I was getting more swallowed up by that than stripping. It's not that there's like more morality either way, but because working in nightlife at that time in Vegas required me to not only be in the club like 4 nights a week, but also be out to those nights a week, I felt like I got more of my time back with stripping.
Yeah. Yeah. Percent. I could definitely see how one definitely allowed you to be you and less in the mix of the nightlife than the other. So as you transitioned into functional health and you started getting into the weeds with clients and those types of things, I'm curious, like, what was the main thing that made you realize that this was the direction you needed to go? Did you have something with your own health? Did you experience something, or was it just an interest?
So, a couple different things. So, the first thing that ever made me even interested in fitness was I grew up with two parents who were very, very sick. My mother got cancer for the first time when I was 15 years old. She was diagnosed with leukemia. She was 37. And I was living with my father at that time. I always, like every other year, I was living with one or the other, but I immediately chose to go back to my mother's house after that to take care of her. And so during that time, like I really saw what it was like to truly be sick, to have a handicap, even though her cancer did go into remission. She couldn't walk without a walker for almost 7 years, just because of the severity of the treatment that she went through. And then my father developed some neurodegenerative issues, which put him in such chronic pain that he actually had to retire early. I think he was 52. Like, I don't even think he was 55 years old. So I just saw how important it was to stay healthy. And even before I started going to school, I was always really into working out. Kind of ate like a college kid all through my 20s because that was what I knew. And I didn't have a weight issue. I would just starve myself or go on some radical low carb diet if I wanted to lose some vanity weight. Um, but as I was studying holistic health, I got much more interested into how food makes you feel and stuff like that. And initially, I was really inspired by a couple of the speakers at Institute of Integrative Nutrition who taught about plant based. So I got really interested in that. And then one of the very first coaches that I hired was a vegan coach, and he specialized in strength training because one of the things that I didn't identify with within the vegan community is I found a lot of it, and this is very stereotypical, and I'll admit that. So hopefully not offended, but you know that it's very like hippie and yoga and juicing, and that really wasn't me. I was like, I want to still bodybuild and lift, and so I want to learn from someone who is exemplifying that. And so I worked with this coach for an amount of time. He taught me how to properly partition my nutrients, my macros, so that I could set myself up in a way that, even though it was plant based, was very similar to what a lot of bodybuilders and fitness focused individuals do. So I started first with appealing to the plant based community. And prior to, let's see, I was plant based from, I want to say 2012. Yeah, 2012 to 2022. So for really 10 years, but like for a while, I would just say I was more like plant based. But I did an experiment with myself where I'm like, really want to see if it's possible for me to do this vegan. And in order for me to really feel what this is like, I'm going to commit to 6 months of doing this. So I did it after learning from my mentor, and I felt so good at that time that I just stuck with it. And eventually I went all in on it. And as I was building my coaching business, eventually, my brand was actually La Femme Vegan because I wanted to appear to women who wanted to be plant based or were already plant based and just wanted to incorporate a weightlifting lifestyle.
Yep.
So that was how that.
Well, and how did you, what made you decide to get out of that vegan? Because obviously anyone who follows you now knows
Mhm.
that that's not what you do now. So what made you decide to
Right.
get out of that?
You know, I had a mini identity crisis about it. So I did it for so many years and it really did work for me for a time. But I think now that the reason why it worked well for me at that time was because I got so granular about nutrients. So I ate better than I ever had in my life, period. But all all through my 30s, I still felt good until I got to about 38, 39, I started to feel different. And by the time I hit 39, I really hit a wall in terms of my energy. Even though I was working in nightclubs, I had this whole routine where I almost never got sick. And I started feeling not only super fatigued, but I noticed I was getting sick more often, and got to the point where I was really concerned. I didn't feel like myself anymore. And I was like, God, I must have some sort of chronic illness, because I knew all the things that I was doing to take care of myself. And I know working in a smoky bar like is not ideal. So we'll definitely get to that. But I think I was just looking at what I was doing and saying, there's no way that I can like feel this bad without something being radically off. And
Yeah.
so, because of everything that I'd studied, even though I didn't know exactly what that was, I knew enough to go get testing. And I had friends within the industry, doctors, and other practitioners who were able to help me obtain proper labs and look at my numbers. And I found out that I was definitely low thyroid, but also working with a functional doctor. I remember she told me, I think you're perimenopausal. And I had never even heard that word at 39 years old. I had heard menopause, but I knew menopause was something that happens around 50. And I don't know why I didn't put two and two together, but I just felt like kind of like someone turns your period off, like it's a faucet. Like I
Yeah.
didn't consider slow decline before. So when she said perimenopause, I was like, perimenopause? That sounds like old lady's disease. I don't have that. That was exactly what I said to her. She was a doctor that I knew for a while. And she explained it to me, and she was like, yeah, your progesterone's really low. And I said, oh, well, how do I get it back? And she explained to me, like, you can't, you're not going to. And I was like, oh, but then that was my first introduction to bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. So I started with progesterone. I struggled with my thyroid for a while because I really wanted to try to fix that naturally. And ultimately, I did go on medication. I'm still on medication now, but I do want to say I definitely think it's possible for a lot of people to do that. I think probably the reason why I was not was due to decades of a lifestyle that was not conducive to adrenal health or thyroid health at all. So I'm still not sure that I really have a shot of resolving that issue naturally. I'm gonna give it a whirl next year.
Yeah.
But this is like the first year that my thyroid's actually been good. So I struggled with it for a while with myself. But what I did that really helped me, in spite of the fact that I did ultimately need medication, was I changed my lifestyle. And I knew then and there, like, okay, I had really been holding on to that job in nightclubs as a security blanket. I'm like, I need to let this go or it's going to kill me, because the shift work, and we know now that that's not entirely untrue. Shift workers, I mean, it's not, strippers aren't alone. If you're a doctor, a nurse, police officers, firefighters, the statistics for shift workers are so, so bad. And I do wish that I had known that sooner, because I tell people now, like, thank God for shift workers because we need them. But if this isn't your life's calling, you might want to consider doing something else. Because I feel like I wasted a lot of time, health, and energy on something that truly was not important to me, that I did suffer for long term.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring up the shift worker, because that was immediately what I thought was, I know my nurses are like one of the hardest ones to
Oh
even
God.
balance adrenals. I can't imagine a dancer or someone working in a nightclub multiple days a week, I would even like navigate that with them. So yeah, I don't even know if you could have even tried to like actually make
Well,
money
I
and balance your adrenals.
I did try. So I had a little bit of success, just because I'm so obsessed with what I do, that and when I am working with like you, I have nurses who are shift workers. I always really emphasize control the variables that you can. And so I really did, like, I was always up on my water. My diet was excellent. And if I needed to take time off, I could. I mean, the great thing at that time about being a stripper was I could make enough money in 1 or 2 nights that I could then take the rest of the week off. So I would often go in sprints where I would work, 2 or 3 nights in a row, take time off. And that was how I started building my business as well. I remember the first iPad that I got it so that when I was in the dressing room, I could do client programming back there.
Yeah. I remember you telling me that. That was like,
Yeah.
that's, it's just so fucking cool to hear that. And like, you know, you're definitely a grinder and you're definitely someone who pushes yourself. And I think you're gonna like this podcast is gonna connect with a lot of women who are like you that are like, I just got to make it happen. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. But they also need to understand, that those things do take a toll. And I think that's kind of,
Yeah.
what you're saying too. So, okay, so you've gone through, you've left the club. You're starting to build your business now. Talk to us a little bit about what it was like building your business. How did that go for you? What were some things that kind of came up while you were learning the ropes in being an entrepreneur?
Sure. So in 2019, that was the year that I decided to return to competing. I hadn't competed in, I think, like 7 or 8 years, and didn't think that I was going to do it again. And especially like at that time, in my early 30s, I was like, bikini is like a young woman's game. I didn't think that I would be interested in doing it when I got older. But as my 40th birthday approached, I was like, I really want to give this another shot, especially since when I competed in 2009 when bikini was brand new, and compete again in 2011 at the Joe Wider Flex Model Search, which a lot of people who are old school fans of Olympia, you will remember that. So, but that was fitness model. Like bikini as a sport really still hadn't been established. And as the sport continued to evolve, I found myself just always being a spectator and such a fan and following certain athletes. And I was like, you know what? It might be cool to give this one more go right as I turn 40. Now, unfortunately, that is the same year that all my perimenopausal issues came up. And what I say now is I don't regret what I did because it led me to where I am now. But if you have an adrenal issue, a thyroid issue, hormone issues that come up, wait to fix those before you compete. Because I worked with a very good, well-known coach within the industry who was sympathetic. But like over this year that we were working together from January 2019 to February 2020, I kept on like having to take time off because I was getting so sick. So we'd have to kind of let my body recover and then push, and then let my body recover and push. And there was a show that I had to bow out of. I was finally going to compete in January of 2020. I was going to compete at the LA Fit Expo, and I had my plane ticket, had my room, and everything. And then I got the illness, which has the name that we do not speak, and got so sick. This is January, so no one knew what it was. But I just knew that I was sick as fuck, and there was no way that I could get on stage. Now, I didn't think that I was gonna die, but it was really, really bad, and I did cough for like an entire month. So I finally got on stage in February of 2020. So during that time, I did have a few clients, but where competing really helped me, even though I was definitely riding the struggle bus that whole year, is people love to follow a competitive journey. And so as I was preparing for that show, I picked up a larger following and was able to get enough clients that I was totally done with stripping right after that show. So I was able to quit right before the zombie apocalypse hit. And then when it hit, I was motivated by adrenaline and kept
Yeah.
pushing and kept going.
Yeah, and that's hilarious. The zombie apocalypse. We all
Oh,
remember that. We all remember it, and none of us want to go back. I love that. So I know now, you specifically work with a lot of women who have hormone issues. They're past competitors. They're they've realized that they've totally fucked up their hormone and metabolic function. So like what would you say, now that you're in the space and you've been here for a while and you're really fucking good at it, what do you feel like is the number one thing, that issue that you're seeing with women when it comes to health and hormones?
Honestly, it's stress management. I think a lot of people will say time management, and I think that that's a common scapegoat because no one has enough time. But I really think that a lot of that is you feel that you don't have enough time because you're so stressed by your current lifestyle and you're not sure how to sort it out. And so I really think that that's the catapult for a lot of these issues that we see, certainly with perimenopause, but even other issues like PCOS, certainly adrenal fatigue, Hashimoto's. Stress is a really big trigger for that. So I would say stress is the number one thing. I know it was definitely my issue.
Yeah, I love that. And most of the women, I think, women who are like you are like, and us who are like grinders and they're goers, all of us are high stress. And a lot of times our life is just that way. So we have to figure out and learn from people in ways that we can manage that and still upregulate nervous system, our metabolic health, hormone health, and all those things. And I think that's one of the things that you're really fucking good at, is being able to work with people and help them understand what's going on so that they can make lifestyle changes. So I love that. So let's go back to last year. So it was like beginning of last year. I can't even remember the exact date that we started working together, but I know what?
I remember it was March.
March. Okay. I was
I
going to
want
say February.
the Ides of March.
I remember us, we had we talked in the DMs for what, probably at least 6 months, if not more. And one of the things about you that I think is really fucking cool is that you, you've always had to deal with shit. It's like it comes at you, right? And I know this is not something you want to hang your hat on. Yeah, I know. You don't want to hang your hat on it, but I think your success and who you are and what you're doing is something that I think people need to hear this side of it. So, as we talked about, you didn't have it easy. You're pretty shitty, and as far as like having to work hard and really having to work through a lot, you got out of the dancing, you built your business, and then life kind of happened again. Do you want to talk a little bit about how life kind of hit you again and you kind of had to almost like restart everything that you had already built?
Yes. So during the zombie apocalypse of 2020, my relationship also fell apart, which I know so many other people can do, right? Like it either made you stronger or it just fucked shit up even already was, or it made you acknowledge your shit, which I think is really what happened in my situation. My ex is not a bad person, but we definitely, there was some codependency there and a lot of dysfunction, and we did not belong together. But
Yeah.
so when that happened, I was still surprised by it. Like I was like, oh, you're breaking up with me now in the middle of this? Like, can't you wait at least until after the election? But no. So we broke up summer of 2020. And, it took a while for me to get a new place by the nature of how everything was so disordered around the country. So I got my new place, got coaching was going great. I was continuing to build that way. And when I left that relationship, we were together for over 6 years. And I knew that I wanted a more mutual partnership after that. I think prior to that, I just chose people that I was not only physically attracted to, but we had similar interests. And this guy had similar interests to me. He was also vegan and also like a vegan bodybuilder. And I was like, oh, well, I'm attracted to you. Like, this must mean that we're supposed to be married. And I'm surprised that's not what it meant. Um, I have, I guess, the distinct stereotype of being a stripper. Not that I ever had a sugar daddy, but that I have supported three boyfriends financially within my career. And so I knew that coming away from that relationship, I wanted a relationship that was much more mutual, really defined what I wanted in a partner, because I think something that we miss as women is we're looking for a connection that feels like the fairy tale chemistry, but it's not chemistry that will keep you together. It's compatibility. And you can have a very strong attraction or chemistry with a person and still be totally not compatible, which is what eventually happened within our dynamic. So, anyway, I found that compatibility with my husband in 2021. So we started to date, and my husband was a widower with 3 children. And so, when we got together, it got serious pretty quick. And we eventually moved in together. And even though we weren't married yet, I really took on all of the same responsibilities and household dynamics that I would have as a wife and mother. So I went from single vegan bodybuilder living by herself in a 650 square foot apartment to living in a large 2-story home with James and his family and having all of those responsibilities. And even though that was something that I always wanted, when James and I met, I was 41, and I had already with the fact after my last partner and I broke up that I'm probably not gonna have biological children, but I would like a family. So I'm hoping to find a nice single dad. And I found that in him. Um, but even though that was something I wanted, I was very naive in that I thought we would just live together and I would just continue my life as is. I'm like, I didn't consider all the different duties, I guess, for lack of a better term, that come with that. And so, even though it was a blessing, I was a little overwhelmed. So, when we moved in together, I decided to take a hiatus from my coaching business. And in the midst of that hiatus, I actually ran our Airbnb business, the home that we live in now in Washington State. We bought a home here, Airbnb'd it. Small segue. But when we did that, I also decided in the year 2022 that I didn't want to be vegan anymore. And then so I was thinking, I'm like, I always knew that it was just a hiatus for my business. I was like, let me figure out this family thing and then I'll get back. I so admire like you and Caitlin and other working moms, because that really does throw another element in it. And for me, I didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, I had a husband, 3 kids. My oldest son has a 3-year-old child, so I became a grandma too, and it was just a lot at that time. So I was like, let me figure out this whole family dynamic because I don't want to fuck that up, and then I'll start my business after that because I was really good at it. Like my business, once I put 100% into my business, once I had the courage to leave stripping and go all in on coaching, it did take off very fast. So I just thought like, oh, I'll just pick this up whenever I want to. And so which is so laughable. So anyway, as I was preparing to get back into it and I was no longer vegan, I really wanted to go in the direction of more functional. And I was kind of turning that way even before I left veganism. Like a lot of my old clients, we still, even though we weren't running labs, we would discuss things like how your menstrual cycle affects you. There were a couple of times where, I helped girls manage their thyroid holistically, or at least like support it if they were on medication. So I was already interested in going in that dynamic. And I felt limited within the vegan community, where even before I wanted to change my diet myself, I was like, I really want to serve women in more this way. And I don't care if they're plant-based or not. So it was natural for me to go in that direction. I was already following Jason Theobald. So the moment he opened his functional nutrition seminar that year, I signed up. Felt really good about everything that I was learning, and started getting back into coaching, but it wasn't the same as it was when I started really taking off in 2019, 2020. And so through Jason, I saw Taylor and did FCA and found some success there. But then when I left FCA is a great program, but at the time that I did it, it was only 4 months. And I think I really needed more support than that. But thought I was fine because I had been fine before on my own. So I had some success. I started working, and then immediately, like I finished FCA in July of 2023. August of 2023, my mom gets diagnosed with cancer again for the third time. And so that really threw a wrench in things for me. And my business went on the back burner. I still was serving my clients, but I wasn't doing all the footwork that I needed to attract more people. And so as the months went on, things just got smaller and smaller. And I kept on telling myself, I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to pick it up. You know, like I have these tools in my toolkit that I learned from that program, but it just was not happening. And you and I had already had a dialogue. I had actually started following you, I think like 6 months prior, because I found you through Taylor. And so much you were sharing resonated with me. But I remember the first DM that you sent me, because it was very much like an attract DM. You complimented my lip gloss. So that's the first DM that you asked me what lip liner I was wearing.
I love it. I
Yeah.
probably bought it too, to be honest with you. I think I did. I can't remember. I can't remember now, but I like almost certain that I did. Now I have to go back and see if I can find it.
Yeah, so I struggled, and from that time period, so from the end of the summer all through, into the new year, and I'm just like, God, how am I going to make this happen? And then I also felt what I know so many people feel. We hear it from our fitness clients all the time or prospects, is that I I know I need a coach. I don't think it's the right time because of all the shit that's going on in my life. And I had real shit going on because on top of my mom getting sick, so I was driving from Vegas to LA every month. Our son went through a bad divorce, and through that divorce, they have shared custody. He was living with us, so that meant the 3 year old also was staying at our house. Well, he works full time, like most men do. So I took on the caregiving while he was at work, and while that was such an amazing growth opportunity for me to not only step into the role of grandma, but really bond with both of them because my two girls, I had so much more time with them than I did with my stepson Gavin. I'm so appreciative of that time. However, that was another huge thing that was really weighing on, like, okay, how am I going to make this business work? Because now, like, it's kind of really fallen apart. I have all this going on. Oh, and by the way, James and I also decided to get married in the middle of that and prepared to move across the country. We moved to Washington in May. So I was really struggling, and I'm like, I need to get help now. Like, even though I think it's not the right time, I'm like, if I continue to wait, like, there's going to be no business left. And you and I were talking a little more frequently. I was definitely stalking your account and like learning all I could, but I still needed that help. And because you are a mom yourself, I was like, okay, she knows how to do that. Because I really thought when I was single, I did have empathy for women who were moms, but you really don't get it until you're in it. Like, there were so many times I would get it, and I really cringe now at some of the things that I even thought, like, oh, like, why can't you just meal prep?
Yeah.
Or find
Oh yeah.
time. I'm like, I know what that's like now. So I really want to work with you just because you built your business around, not only did you have a family, but really being able to make yourself available to your children the way that you wanted to. That was super important to me because what was so hard was like, okay, everything that's going on with my family is super important. Like, I'm not going to stop doing that. So how do I compartmentalize or partition my time so I can build this business?
hmm Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things too is we are very much the same style learner when it comes to coaching, right? Like we need that support and someone like to be hands on with us in order to move forward through those messy times, right? And I think, when people look at you as an online coach, oftentimes I don't see all of that stuff. They don't, right? Like they don't know all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. They don't know that, one week is a complete shit show and the next week you're traveling, and doing all of those things. And I think that's why I feel like your journey is so relatable, not only from a fitness standpoint, but also from an entrepreneur and business standpoint of like, hey, like you recognized, hey, I need a different level of support. I need someone to be in my business. I need someone who's going to essentially help make this fit you. And that's what we've done. And we've had multiple hard conversations you and I have through our journey together of like, look, like this isn't about how fast you can go and compare to someone else. This is like how we can build a sustainable business that fits you and James's and the whole family's vision of really what you're building. And you and I know what that is. So I think it's so powerful from that standpoint. So you're like, talk to me a little bit about this year and kind of like where you want to take your business next year and really what that looks like and what that means for you.
Sure. Well, I will say now that unfortunately my mother's cancer did return. So that's still an ongoing thing where family is dealing with that and I'm still building this. And one of the reasons why it's so important for me to share that part of my journey is because it's times like these where a lot of people will quit. You'll feel justified in it and everyone around you will tell you that you are as well. And I'm not saying that there might be some people where maybe they really truly do need to take a step back, but the gift that my hiatus gave me was showing me that I don't want to do that again because the way I see it now, I would have had to have slowed down, but I could have kept going. And so now moving into this next year, I said, like, okay, how do I move forward in the midst of this? But in terms of serving my clients, I think really now I'm at a point, I always serve people well. That's one thing that has never been my issue. I'm kind of a savant when it comes to the functional stuff, like, but I'm only good at being me. So
Yeah.
don't ask me to do anything. I am really good at what I do, and I do really care about the women that I work with. So I think now what I am focused on most is just reaching more people. Not so much to glorify myself, but I see so many women that I have conversations with, whether they become my clients or not, like there is a path forward, or their doctors aren't helpful. Like that's something that like gosh, not only is it frustrating, but it's just infuriating where a woman will say, I'm having these symptoms or I'm so fatigued, like getting out of bed is a strain and being told like, oh, well, you're 40 now. Like that's normal. And so I really want the message to be like, hey, feeling like shit is not normal no matter how old you are. And there is something that you can do. Like if your doctor isn't supportive, first of all, especially if you live in this country, there are so many practitioners. You have so many options now. Even if there's not someone local to you, you can work with someone online. And certainly, I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on the internet. But a lot of the work that you and I would do together is fine tuning your lifestyle in a way where those things, honestly, that's 90% of the work. You might need some BHRT or be like me and have to rely on thyroid medication. But I really believe that I would not be in the place that I am now had I not done what I did to change my lifestyle. So I'm really trying to reach more women to empower them that there really is so much more in their control than what they think there is.
Amen, girl. I freaking love that. And I think you mentioned like about serving your clients. You guys, anyone who's listening, I have to tell her so many times. I'm like, I'm an empath, you guys. I think she's worse of an empath than I am most of the time. Like when we get on calls, I'm like, oh boy, like if she gets emotional, I'm emotional, but she like the way that you serve your clients, and the way that you built your business and where we're going makes me really fucking excited. I know just that what you've shared today about your journey and how you support people, this is going to connect with people. And anyone who's listening, if you're in that situation, reach out, because that's what she's here for. And when it comes to the functional side of things, she knows exactly what she's doing. So don't hesitate to reach out. But Jasmine, so like, what would be your piece of advice? And I want to go from like a fitness and a business standpoint here. So for someone who's in your in the point of like they're wanting to grow their business, but they're feeling like life's just like trying to fucking knock them down at every corner, and it keeps getting pushed. What to them as far as like if they were in that situation?
For the love of God, ask for help. So I heard this quote. I'm going to misquote him, but so Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson, he was sharing on his podcast that so many times people won't make change in the instance of being good. So things aren't that bad, right? They're not ideal, but they're not that bad. So good is the enemy of great, right? So there's that mentality. But on the other side, there's people who are so used to dealing with shit that becomes normal to them. And they're not looking for other options, just because even though they're uncomfortable, they're still comfortable because it's been going on so long. They've been putting up with it for so long. And I have done that in so many areas of my life, certainly with stripping, all the boyfriends that I financially supported. Like we can go down the laundry the laundry list of some of my poor decision making. But I really feel like I made that mistake as well, again with business coaching, and that between the program that I finished and finding you, like it really took me 6 months of thinking about it. And 6 months is a big chunk of time.
Yeah.
We've made some big strides in 6 months. We're going to make more this second half. And I would not be able to do it without you. I need the support. I need the accountability. As things are getting crazy, you need it even more. And so for anyone who's like, my life is just too crazy right now, that's when you need the help. Like when shit is good, these are the moments. But I really find that my life is more hectic than not. So for anyone who is struggling, make that investment, find a way. Like when I hired Brenda, I put it on a credit card this next time, because I now am making an income. I have a piggy bank that has my Brenda fund. So, like, and it's an investment. But I think a lot of times people will say like, I don't have the money. I'm like, okay, well, maybe you don't have the cash in your pocket, but are you resourceful? Like, can you find a way? Because if your car breaks down, you're going to find a way to fix it. Some of you, like if you need to get your hair done, you've got to find the funds for that. So be resourceful, do what you need to do. And I always knew like, okay, even if I'm putting something on credit, I'm doing this to move me forward, so that it's an investment, right? I'm not just spending money. I'm making an investment. I'm going to make my investment back plus, and then I can keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a perfect example. Like, would you even change any of that advice for a fitness client who's stuck and like feels like they're busy and they can't move forward? Would you change anything about what you just said, or do you feel like that is also very similar for your fitness coaching clients?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say, so while my business is valuable to me, my highest value, like in the non-negotiables in your life, you can only have so many. My number one is my physical health, even before my mental health, because I'm not like well or present without feeling physically well. It literally, it has a domino effect on every aspect of your life. So my health is my number one. My husband and my family are my number two. Business is my number three. So it's up there. It's important, but my health is number one. And I think it's fucking crazy that people will even like debate if it's a good idea to get help with this. It's like, okay, well, you've now been through 3 doctors and 2 macro coaches. You don't need to work with me for life. Work with me for 6 months and we can get some shit done. I'm someone that I like to work with whoever I'm with. I'm committing for at least a year, unless it's something like a program where there's like a hard stop where I can't. Um, I I think that you really need that time to learn, but you do learn, right? Like eventually you can leave the nest, so to speak, and do your own thing. Business, because business is something that ever evolves. I don't see myself ever without a mentor again. But I think for someone who's struggling on their health and fitness journey, where maybe you don't want to become a professional athlete, but you're looking for a sustainable way to stay fit and feel good in your own body, commit to 6 months.
Exactly.
It's crazy to me that people like even wonder if they should do that. And I think part of that might be this whole idea that it's still very popular, like the 12-week transformation. And I will say, I get it, because when I initially built my business, I was able to do it so quickly. I thought I would kind of have a 12-week transformation in my business the second time around. And I didn't. Like, my needs changed. The dynamics of social media have changed. And so it is what it is. And if you're someone who, you do have hormonal issues, or there's like you're eating a low calorie diet and you're still not seeing any change, even though, you are counting your macros, you are going to the gym 5 days a week, it's not that you're doing something wrong. There's something going on inside you where you're not metabolically fit. Because one of the things that I do like to say is when you're metabolically fit, maintaining your weight is easy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But if you have that going on, you're not going to be a 12-week transformation, and you need to be at peace with that. I will say, like, even for myself as a competitor, I always expect to spend 4 to 6 months in prep.
Yeah.
And I'm already fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's kind of crazy that anyone thinks that they're going to resolve every issue in 12 weeks.
Yeah. No, I honestly wish there would just be like an across the board standard, like health and fitness, nothing under 4 months is going to do anything for you. Like give it, now both of my program's 6 months too, because it's like, that's just what amount of time I need with someone to make sustainable changes. But I 100% agree. And girl, I appreciate you sharing so much, being vulnerable and helping to inspire so many other women and men who are going to listen to this. So if you don't mind, tell everyone where they can find you.
Yes. So the easiest way to get a hold of me is on Instagram. I'm at Coach Jasmine Marie, and my DMs are always open.
Yeah, they are, girl. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thank you guys all for tuning in, and we will see you next week. That's it for this episode of Unfiltered with Brenda Breland. If you're loving the real talk and unfiltered vibes, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps more badass people like you find the show. Got questions, stories, or just want to say hey? Let's chat on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, life's messy, but you don't have to do it alone. Keep it real, keep it unfiltered, and I'll see you next week.